Thank you so much. Let me just set the timer so I don't go over it. I was supposed to present earlier, but getting here was a challenge. I went almost to the Swiss Alps on the bus, but finally. Okay. So thank you so much for having me. My good afternoon, everyone. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I did make some notes. My name is Mohamed Hassan. I work with the Refugee-Led Research Hub, and which is affiliated with the University of Oxford and the Refugee Studies Center. I'm here today thanks to a Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative, which facilitated my movement to come here to the Global Refugee Forum. I also want to thank UNHCR for increasing the participation of refugees at the Global Refugee Forum. I'm going to share with you briefly insights from some of the research that we have done at the Refugee-Led Research Hub, but also based on my own lived experience in the camp for more than 25 years in Kakuma refugee camp. I want to talk to you about 2 points. I know the title of my presentation was Integrated Approaches to Livelihood, but I also want to touch on something that is also equally important, and it's actually a form of livelihood inclusion, which is durable solutions. I think self-reliance must be looked at holistically. So I want to share with you 3 key points. One is, I think, the language and the frameworks that we have developed around durable solutions. They fall short because they don't match or they don't reflect the needs and aspirations of people on the ground. The frameworks focus on the perceived needs. What do people need? And how can we give it to them, rather than looking at what is it that they actually want and recognizing the agency of displaced people. I think we have to start with the rights of people and the role of governments in addressing those rights. This has to be a discussion, durable solution has to be a discussion about rights and the role of governments in giving those rights to the people. Sometimes when refugees come to these forums, we're wearing these suits, we're speaking very eloquently. People think that all refugees are maybe like Mohamed, which I have the privilege of being young, a male, and growing up in the camp, having access to good education. But that's not the case for 99% of other refugees, people I grew up with, and people who've been in camp for decades now. And I think people have agency, but forced displacement is almost always experienced as trauma. So, you can find different ways of dealing with that trauma, but at the heart of it, individuals and communities experience displacement as trauma. And it's something that stays with you lifelong. You overcome one, and then there's another hurdle to overcome. And sometimes the obstacles come at you fast and relentless. So I think we have to move the language of durable solution from what we think people need to people-centered and what are the needs of the people. And I think it's also time we recognize that the way we have been thinking about durable solutions no longer really makes sense. Sometimes when you attend some of the discussions here and also other places that talk about durable solution, people always say that the best method is for people to go back home. But where is home when you've lived in a camp for 20 plus years, when that's the only home that you've ever known? So because displacement is not something that is 6 months or 1 year in most cases, especially in Africa, in East Africa, we're born in these camps. And I was telling someone recently that you will find mothers giving birth in the hospital that they were born in. And that just helps to paint the picture of what displacement looks like. So for most people, especially in the camps where I come from, there is no back home. This is the only home that people know. When we look at the other solution that is often touted, which is around integration, it always has a caveat. It's not just integration. It's socioeconomic integration, which means looking at it socially and maybe economically. But I just want to say that being a shopkeeper does not mean a solution for you. It does not take away the displacement that you experience, the marginalization, and all of that. So I think the basis for any solution has to be a way for you to live a life that is normal without always that support on the sides. So often, again, when I hear inclusion, integration, I'm happy with it. I don't have a problem. I do consider myself as someone who's part of that host community, but I don't feel as accepted as I would like to be. So for many people in my position, some of the friends I have in the camps, when we have discussions, we feel that we are always on the sidelines, always looking in, always feeling as the outsider, not belonging. And you get reminded of that constantly in interactions. When people label you, when they put a label after your name, when you are referred to them, the refugees, it creates a psychological, invisible walls between you and other people, that you don't belong, you're not one of us. But I went to the same school as you did. We played ball together, we watched the same movies, we speak the same language. How can you still say this, and how can you still use that language? So we have to, even I think with practitioners sometimes, honestly speaking, it feels when people refer to as the refugee, they want to say this, them, it creates unnecessary exclusion. And that's also another point I wanted to make around terminology. How do we describe people? How do we describe solutions? So far I've said that repatriation and going back home may not be applicable to most people in protracted states. And integration, as currently envisioned, may not always be the best solution. And I know that when people talk about resettlement, they always put, again, caveats. It's less than 1%, it's this. But for most people, it is the only solution. It is the only solution. And from the research that I did looking at durable solutions from the perspective of communities, I spoke to refugees in the Dab refugee camp, in Kakuma refugee camp, but also in Nairobi. When I tell them, how do you see integration? The first question they ask you is, am I getting a national ID? No. But you will have the right to run a shop. But he says that's not a solution. I can run my shop in the camp. If I'm not getting an ID, if I'm not getting a pathway to permanent residency, if I'm not getting an ID to citizenship, then that is not a solution for me. And for that reason, resettlement has really become a very appealing prospect for many refugees. And I think the reason to that is when you look at factually what is happening on the ground, you grow up with someone in a camp, you live side by side, all of a sudden they get resettled and they come back to you after 4 years, totally changed. All of a sudden they're no longer a refugee, they're an American now. They're a Canadian now. And you're sitting now on the opposite sides of the table. And they come back, and that really has a big psychological effect on other people around them. And you ask yourself, I could have been them. I could have done everything that they did. Sometimes people ask me, oh, look at Ilhan Umar. We grew up in the same camp. In the 1990s, we were all in the Dab refugee camp. But someone believed in her. Someone gave her a chance. And that chance, for whatever reason, is not accessible to everyone. And no one believes in us. So you get stuck in that camp, and then you have maybe kids at some point, and then it's just, so you need people to believe in you. That's the only way you can break the cycle sometimes. And that's the case for many refugees. Even though I'm educated, I have all of this privilege, I don't really see a way out. And I ask myself, if I as Mohamed don't see a way out, how can these other refugees, the female refugees, the children, the ones who don't have the suits and the language, how do they see something? And that's why sometimes this is an unexplored topic. But the mental health crisis in the camps, it's because people don't see a way out. It's darkness without any light. It's a tunnel without any light at all. So sometimes that's why there's a disconnect between the aspirations and the commitments that are made here and how the lives of the people on the ground are. I have lost many of my friends that I went to school with, that I worked with in the camp as a community leader, as a primary school teacher in Kakuma. And for you to be here where I am today, and for you just to have your sanity, it's really unbelievable. So I'm just trying to re-emphasize, and that's why I was happy yesterday. My key takeaway from the Global Refugee Forum is 2 sessions that I attended. One was labor mobility session that I attended yesterday. It really affected me. It was really powerful because it showed that there is a possibility, there is a lifeline out there, and people are thinking about this. And the other one was commitments that people made around the resettlement of refugees for those who, meet the criteria, even though protection should be, everyone is deserving of protection at the end of the day. So that is one, the language that we have, and trying to update some of that to reflect terminology. I think secondly, any intervention around durable solutions or livelihood has to be based on accountability. And that's one of the main challenges on the ground. There's a gap. There's communities, and then there is the duty bearers, people who have all the power, who have the resources. How do you ensure accountability to communities at the end of the day? Because people, the refugees, they don't vote. They don't have political participation. And especially now, as we talk of moving from camps to settlements, camps to municipalities, camps to towns, that is all good and well, but how do we ensure that the rights of people are protected? Politicians feel responsible to their voters, to their constituencies. But even now, as we look at some of the municipalities, you find that 85% of the people are displaced people in that one area, yet they don't have political participation. So how does that look like? I know this is not maybe in light of the Global Refugee Forum, where we want to depoliticize conversations, but I just want to say that inherently, displacement is political. Displacement refugee lives are political. So I'll move on quickly from that point, but just to say that accountability is needed. Otherwise, it's a graveyard of ideas. People come, they experiment, it's like a lab, and they go away without any, consequences or anything else. So we have to, accountability has to be the bedrock of everything. Upward accountability and downward accountability. And lastly, the third point is, and I mentioned this at the beginning, it's terminology. How do we describe people? What is the terminology that we use in this space? And for me, one of the, as a community leader in Kakuma, one of the words, the terms that I heard a lot and that people didn't like that much, or it really affected them, was this whole idea of, for example, calling someone a beneficiary. As soon as you label someone a beneficiary, you're already exercising, you're saying that I have authority over you, you should bow down to me, you should be happy that I'm giving you aid, for example, or I'm helping you. Again, the POC, I know, again, this is not maybe the right space to say this, but terminology like POCs, which is dehumanized, desanitized, it lacks any, real life or any emotions. I think that's not really helpful for these discussions. They really create imbalances on the ground, which sometimes can affect people's lives. And I think at the end of the day, just remembering that we're dealing with people just like us. And as organizations and as people who want to help, as they become corporates, you just become another cog in the machine, and you think of these processes, you lose sight of what is actually important. You're helping someone, you're interacting with another human being. They have needs, they have agency, they have families, they have dreams, they have hopes, they have fears. But sometimes these conversations are elevated to a place where it's huge commitments, and it's depersonalized. It's depersonalized and dehumanized. So I just want all of us, as people who work with people in displacement, just remember that it could be you on the other side, and you would want someone to believe in you. And that's the message I always repeat to people. I'm here today because someone believed in me. Someone gave me that chance to be here today. And we have to extend that to other people also. You have to believe in people. And that's, I think, I have a lot I can say, but I think that's maybe the best place to leave it. And just to say, ultimately, invest in people. Invest in people, build people up. And who knows, by the action that you do, you can change the destiny of someone's life, someone's kids, and the sky can be the limit for them. I'm afraid I might get more emotional if I continue with this, but thank you so much for listening to me.
Wow. Thank you so much.